like I gone too soon. Isn't that you and me? I only see a my review. Yeah, I'm laying here tonight, holding someone new, still chasing you, still chasing me.
Broadcasting across the city on 98.7 FM. New Style Radio.
New Style Radio, 98.7 FM, and we are back for more interesting stuff. I'm here with the wonderful, awesome, radiant, ever effervescent KTB.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How's your New Year and Christmas been?
It's been awesome. Yeah, let's juice up your mic. Go on.
Okay, that's sounding a little bit better.
Oh, sounding awesome. Better. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
Not sound too bad then.
Good. So it's 2024, Katie.
It is, yes.
And what's your hopes for this coming year?
I think more than anything, the best that anybody can really hope for is just that it's better than whatever last year was.
It was that bad, huh?
Things can only get better at this point.
I feel a song coming. Things can only get better. Good, groovy. Well, it's great to be back here. We have secured Tuesday night, 8 till 10.
Ooh.
So there'll be some more shenanigans from the crew. And next week, we'll have Brent, who... What he's done, Katie, he did a cover of a song by Luminary and the great artist, Lionel Richie.
Oh, I think you did mention it to me once. But...
Yeah. So Lionel Richie was happy with the cover that Brent has done, and BBC have now accepted his song and they're going to play it.
Oh, are they?
So Radio WM. So.
Have they told him what show it's going to be played on? They'll never tell you the time, but
they never tell you the time, do they? Yeah. That's what I was just talking to you about. So it's all good. It's all looking good, and it was just wonderful. Brent and his daughter Savannah is also going to be joining the crew.
Oh.
So she'll be helping us on Tuesday with Myriad and Scotty. We're just waiting for young Scotty. He informs me that he's on his way. Right. So much has happened in the world. As you know, we like to cover a bit of geopolitics here on the DJ Notchalus show, DJ Notchy show, and movements are happening in Ukraine, developments. I don't know if you follow. Do you follow geopolitics?
I follow it as much as I can stand.
As much as
I
you
get
stand.
to a point where I look at the world and I'm like, God, this is so terrible and horrific.
Right.
I need to not know about it anymore. But I do take an active interest in a lot of stuff politically.
Yeah, so the war in Ukraine, they've lost the war basically, yeah?
Well, I think we all knew that was coming.
So all those NATO weapons, Nazism, of course, the Azov Nazis, who were sort of instrumental in the violent and just quite frankly horrific murder and mayhem that were causing the Donbass, which is like the eastern part of Ukraine.
Yes.
So they've been bombing it since 2014.
Yeah.
The British media, USA, Nazi media weren't covering it, of course. But, you know, things have... The great Vladimir Putin, because I'm always reminding people, it was Russia, it was the mighty Soviet Union that liberated Africa. It was the Russians. And people forget that, you see. And we are being reminded, you know, Niger and Burkina Faso, I don't know if you know, they've sort of kicked out the French and all the rest of it. And to see Vladimir Putin, who is probably the best leader on the planet, he's got the best army anyway, he's got the best weapons anyway, we know that much. And to have these two things happening at the same time, 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. What do you think there? I mean,
I don't know. I think the thing with the whole Ukraine and Russia war that I found really, really jarring is the difference between how we treat that and the war between Israel and Palestine. Like the same things and not seen the same way.
That's right.
A kid throwing rocks at soldiers in Ukraine is a little freedom fighter, and look, he's there for the cause. A kid does it in Palestine, they're going to prison.
That's right. It's the hypocrisy, and you know, then we factor in. I'll be playing it a little bit later on in the show. the whole issue. I mean, I lived in Damascus.
Oh, did you?
Spent a bit of time in Damascus in my mid-20s, and it was so fascinating to see black Arabs. I just, I wasn't expecting that. You know what I mean? But there are African communities in Palestine, of which you never hear anything about.
Yep.
My research that I recently published, where I discovered, much to my horror, the Nazi salutes of Hezbollah, who are like these hailed as these freedom fighters and all the rest of it. It was very heartbreaking. I felt so motivated that I actually published a paper.
Okay.
And it's very popular on ResearchGate, as most of my papers are, because I'm the most read scholar at Birmingham City University for the CEB faculty. And the racism, Nazism of the Arabs goes back 1400 years, of course. It's been 1400 years, and the colonization of Palestine, as I'm explaining to people, Palestine was colonized by Umar al-Khattab, who was a enemy of the Prophet. There's other opinions, of course. I follow the Shia understanding, which is 1400 years again. So there's this bifurcation. You've got those that praise Umar and those that curse him, the Shia and so forth, and the Sunnis who venerate him. So Palestine itself was colonized without sort of any Quranic or any the prophets say so, or Imam Ali say so. So we're essentially looking at, and again, I understand there are different points of views. No one needs to call in or text my phone about intemperate language and all the rest of it. So the situation, from my research and the research of obviously venerable and erudite Shia scholars, we've come to a situation now where it's colonizers fighting colonizers, basically, essentially. And
it's innocent civilians that are the ones that are trapped in the middle, that unfortunately have to take the brunt of everything that happens, while those that are causing the situation are set and able to be safe and not have to worry about the situation that they've created.
There you go. And most eloquently put, for my understanding, it's as simple as that, really. I mean, whether you're a Shia, Sunni, non-Muslim, whatever, Jewish, Christian, whatever, this idea that women and children are suffering because of the decisions of very well-funded men.
Yeah.
Therein lies the problem, you see. And it behoves people of common sense and decency. Yes, there's all the Palestinian pro-river to the sea, whatever the statement is, and so on and so forth. We've touched on Zionism and Lord Curzon and Sir Ronald Stores. These were the people in the British government around the early part of the 20th century who launched the Zionist project. They used terminology, this is from the Irish Times, of course, that their plan was to create a little loyal Ulster, Jewish Ulster. This is what they actually said. A loyal, like Northern Ireland in the Middle East. Exactly, yeah. And, I see so many commentators from, obviously Arab intellectuals, Palestinian on the left and so on and so forth. I mean, I'm a computer scientist. I got to dig deep. I got to literally dig deep. And it just baffles me how these scholars and academics and professor this, and I've written this book and I've won this prize. I'm thinking, well, why aren't you going to the substance? Let's deal with the substance, yeah? Women and children blown to smithereens because of the machismo and egos of men. There's a problem.
One of the biggest issues with the majority of problems that women face is that to have any sort of real change, they'd have to be a man to make that change. So even though it's problems that are affecting women, a lot of times it's a situation where women cannot fix it because they're not in a position of power or in a position of authority where they're able to fix the problem.
This again, a great and stunning point. Had it been a situation where women and the children who are suffering, who are the victims of the tyranny and the oppression and the bombs, on both sides, either sides,
Yeah.
whatever. If they could have the discussion, yeah, the men and women, the non-combats, because out of all of this, there is a thing in Islamic fiqh or jurisprudence. Yes, have to mind my language and apply the correct scholarly terms. And there are etiquettes of war in regards to the Islamic and the Quranic atmosphere, wherein those who are not participating should be left alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yes, we can talk about the conscription and all the rest of it, but ultimately, when I'm speaking obviously from an Islamic perspective, when you look at the jurisprudence and the rules of war, there's a whole list of etiquettes which appear to be abandoned and appear to be ignored. And as I've always said, as I've said in the papers that I've published, my thing is the truth. I'm just interested in the truth and the substance, whether it's for me or against me. It doesn't matter. It's just the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Going back to, let's broaden it out, of course, men's behaviour. It's not whether men feel uncomfortable or whatever. It's just the truth. If that's what women are saying, this is how they feel, and that's how they feel.
Exactly.
And you just have to deal with it from that point of view. Anyway, we're going to dip into some Colonel McGregor, great scholar from America, and he's done a bit of a summing up on the situation in Ukraine, just so we're going to wrap this section up before we dip into artificial intelligence and the usual nerd stuff. Yeah. Anyway, Colonel McGregor.
Strategic defeat is all over the world. It's just kept out of view for the American people. We are now at a low point in our history, certainly since the beginning of the 20th century, where we command almost no respect, no admiration, and very little support. Even our vassal states in Europe are walking away from us right now. All of the governments in Europe that have been cooperating with us are on the road to removal. None of them are going to last much more. And when those governments finally go, they'll be replaced by new ones, as we've seen in Poland. But even that one is not going to last for very long. Europe is in turmoil. But the one thing that everybody can agree upon is that we, Americans, because of our unrelenting hostility to Russia, have destroyed their economies, ruined their scientific industrial base, made them paupers. They don't forget that. So it's only a matter of time until we're ultimately going to be told to get out of Europe. People find that incomprehensible, but that's coming. It's very definitely coming. The European people are a little further down the road than we are in terms of understanding the extent to which their own governments have hurt them. We're not quite as far along yet. We'll get there, but they're ahead of us. We're going to watch sweeping changes in Germany, sweeping changes in France and other countries in the West that formerly behaved like obedient little vassals of the greater American empire. That's over.
Broadcasting across the city on 98.7 FM. New Style Radio.
New Star Radio, 98.7 FM. You're in tune to the DJ Notchalus show. Absent DJ Notchalus. You're here with Aston Walker and
KDB.
Doing it big, doing it large, talking all things geopolitical and creative. Because what I've found in life, in creating a film, bit of poetry, you need your human story, don't you?
Yeah.
And in order to make the story relevant, it has to be based on some sort of reality, right?
Yeah, you have to have had experiences to be able to create something. Even if you're making up something completely brand new, you still need the reference of those experiences that you've been through to be able to create anything that anybody's going to connect with on some sort of deeper level. Without the experience, it'll always be very superficial, and nobody will have that feeling about it that you get with great films or great art.
True. And it's not necessarily like the experience, it's some sort of like, I don't know, study,
or
some sort of investigation, or
understanding knowledge of
the
what
thing
you're talking about.
And these things are quite important, and that tends to be how I approach science fiction. Yeah, so I write sci-fi, I'm a published sci-fi, short story sci-fi. However, it's very much based around faith, what people believe in, whether they believe in God or whether they believe in idols or believe in nothing. Some people don't believe in anything. So that tends to be my starting point, and then relationships between people, just generally, and from there I can add the fantastic elements, but always, and obviously the composition, the cinematography, or great scene or whatever, or great movement. It could just be something as simple as a bit of movement, but it's always going to reference some sort of human activity, which segues me again into artificial intelligence, and how AI, we saw the at the latter part of 2023 the concerns, I would say, about AI, artificial intelligence, where it's taken us. Sort of luminaries. I'm no fan, of course, but Elon Musk and the big Silicon Valley players being in Congress warning about AI.
Slow down.
Yeah, that's right. And so, what did you look at that? Or?
So I think that's one of the things that was always going to be an issue. As soon as it got to a point where it was financially beneficial to big business to have AI involved, then there was never going to be putting a lid back on that box ever.
True.
I mean, we can have the people who actually know what they're talking about say a million times, we are getting too far ahead of ourselves. We're not in a position where we're able to do this properly. But as long as it's financially beneficial to a big business, then it's not going to make any difference what kind of warnings they get or what type of barriers we try and put in the way, because it's a way of making more profit. And
that's right. So we're back to capitalism again. So the thing is, with these automated AI systems, the computer, the machine that the West has heavily invested in as far as the chip technology and so on and so forth, if business X can save money without having to employ a human being who's going to call in sick or get pregnant or whatever, complain, unionize, they're under capitalism, under the rules of capitalism, they're going to go with the system that's cheaper, faster, and can work 24 hours.
And the government that we've got in charge of making any sort of legislation regarding this sort of situation are already using it for benefits for themselves. I mean, the benefit system, universal credit, are now going to switch over to, when you call them up, rather than having to go through the options, it'll be an AI that you're talking to direct you to the correct department. And they're already phasing that in at the moment. So if the government are already benefiting from it themselves, there's absolutely no chance that they're looking to bring in legislation that effectively slows things down and gives us a chance to understand what we're doing before we get past a point where there's just no return. True.
Yeah, very, very scary times. It reminds me of the old Arnold Schwarzenegger film, Terminator, and all that good stuff. So we're obviously dabbling with the AI in a creative sense, to develop interesting images, interesting visuals for a film project that we're working on here at New Star Radio 98.7 FM. And there's been some interesting developments as far as the world record attempt. Dedication, that's what you need. So we're up to 410 reads. 410 reads. And it's looking good. It's shaping up. But I think what I need to get on air and on the record for listeners or people tuning in or people who are interested in what's going on, it's not some. I mean, it costs you a $5 to go to the Guinness Book of Records, right? And it takes them then another 12 weeks for them to investigate. You can. There is a fast track where you pay out, I think, like £600 or £1,000.
That just seems unnecessary.
Yeah, and they'll do it in like 2 weeks or something, a week. Yeah. So it's all capitalist, of course, all very commercial. We've taken the approach of doing it as an academic exercise. Hence, the world record is the most reads on an academic research website, ResearchGate, which is ResearchGate. Now, I have to monitor ResearchGate every day because last year, obviously, Seleni, BAE Systems and Dr. Carlo Harvey and the very faculty that I'm associated with, I'm not there, I'm not obviously, trespass notice and all the rest of it, police action, all the rest of it. But they got my stuff removed from ResearchGate last year. 3 times they tried it.
And were you able to get it just put back up? Or
Yeah, I'm actually, but you going to the police, Bourneville Station. I mean, like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Seeing your Facebook posts.
It seems very over the top and unnecessary and just a pointless endeavour in the first place. I don't understand why they thought that was the way to go, or that would have any sort of long-lasting effect.
Wow. Well, you see, Katie, this is why I like having you on the show, because you've now opened a portal. The doors are now flung open. We're now looking at why would the Chancellor and the ex-Vice Chancellor Philip Plowden, who I believe was a legal guy. So there was a Vice Chancellor there at the time, who was a professor of legal, whatever. And there was Lyle Bignon, who I know many listeners may know. He's a Caucasian chap, I believe, of Irish extraction. He was in charge of marketing and PR.
Yeah.
And there was, who else was there? Well, let's just stick with Dr. Carlo Harvey. So when I was at the university, I'd not been at the university for about 18 months, 2 years. And then the chat GPT, there is method to this madness, by the way. Everything is connected. So in literally a year ago to this day, chat GPT came out. Yeah. And I wrote a paper where I interrogated the chat GPT. Okay. About Sunni Shia polemics. Yeah. Sunnism, Shia Islam. Because obviously I'm a Shia, and I, in my prayer, privately, publicly, I curse Aisha, Abu Bakr, Umar, Ibn Ziyad, Khalid bin Walid. These are famous personalities that 1 billion Muslims venerate and say they're great people. But I don't believe that, of course, And nor does Imam Ali, nor does Allah, according to what I've researched. Other views and opinions are available. Anyway, so I published this paper last year, thanking Lenny Henry, thanking Dr. Carlo Harvey for supporting my work. Yeah. And that paper got 523 hits. Okay. All, governments all over were obviously reading it and so on and so forth. And then I had the interaction, the very theatrical interaction with Dr. Carlo Harvey. Bearing in mind, Sir Lenny Henry is a comic. Yeah. He's a joker. Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's an actor. He's a phony. He's a fake. He's a fraud. Yeah. He also was he's part of Comic Relief. Yeah. Who were collecting the public's money. Mm-hmm. And then him and his other acolytes and weirdos were investing that money in BAE Systems and tobacco and alcohol and God knows what else. And so they're a bunch of hypocrites, basically. And I stand on that. Comic Relief, the people who founded Comic Relief, are a bunch of hypocrites. So why they all got together, little Aston, me, nobody Aston, my first time writing papers. Yeah. Bearing in mind I didn't get a degree, but I still contribute to the commons. It's called the commons in academia. So I was contributing to the academic commons and the great researchers that are in the city. There's a lot of great researchers and academics in Birmingham, of course. So I was just making a contribution. And then Sir Lenny Henry, Dr. Carlo Harvey, Philip Plowden, Professor Philip Plowden, Lyle Bignon, Caroline Block, I dare say Dr. Michael Bickerton, Leanne Forbes. These are other VFX. These are like the film people, because they all close ranks as academics, And they thought, oh, well, Aston's just a nigger. Yeah, I said it. Aston's just a dumb nigger. We can do what we like. You see? He's a fool. He's a convicted thief. We can do what we like.
Yeah.
That was their calculation. That's what they calculated.
Yeah.
So then the police were involved. I do apologise for using the N-word, but I think it's
Justified.
reinforces, you know. So they took it upon themselves as an institution, as a body, as an academic body, to censor my work. And obviously I counted it and whatever, because I'm brilliant. And in my brilliance and with my African genius, my African DNA, the way I was raised by my family, and also I related this to Shia Islam and Imam Hussein's his heroic stance, 6-1 AH Karbala, Ali's heroic stance, get me dates all mixed up now, Battle of Jamal, I can't remember the date, my head's all over the place, but never mind. But anyway, the point being, I stood up for my rights through the mechanism of publishing, of writing. It was the only thing that I had, because I didn't know about ResearchGate. I didn't have a clue. It was only when I noticed that Dr. Carlo Harvey published his papers on there that I thought, oh, this must be the correct forum.
Yeah, this is the way you go. Yeah.
Precisely. So that's what I did. So they all colluded. Hundreds of academics colluded. And remember, there's a black studies course at BCU by Professor Kehinde Andrews. Yeah. Now, what's interesting about good brother Professor, his father and my father were good friends.
Oh, were they?
Very good friends.
Yeah.
As I've said this on the radio many times before, when I meet his wonderful father, the first thing he'll always ask me is, "How's your mother?" Because he'll say my mother's now. I won't say it on air, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And what has alarmed me more than anything else, if ever, and this is for you, Professor Andrews, if you're listening, I know you talk to Piers Morgan and Prince Harry, and you're far, he's a great scholar anyway. He's obviously a very great intellect, far above mine. But if you're listening, sir, I postulate, I put forward that my case would make for a great black study. Yes, my revealing of the Lord Curzon Durbar 1903 book, and presenting a book to the 3 universities, Aston University, Birmingham University and BCU, presenting them with this book that none of them had in their libraries. Yeah. Remember, none of them had it.
Not one of them.
Until I found it. Because I'm going to do my Christopher Columbus, I discovered it, right? And I presented it in a very scholarly fashion, of course. I say scholarly fashion, or I emailed a PDF. Yeah, then we'll go that far. So there you have it. So the salient point being, I prevailed. I am victorious. I beat them at their own game.
Yeah.
Through use of my intellect, through use of the commons and research and looking into things, just like you looked into AI and so on and so forth. And it now becomes a basis for theatre, for a play, for a feature film, to train young Scotty, to train young Myriad, to train young Susanna, to train all my students in Africa, to say, well, look, this is what I went through in 2023. I went through this so that in order that the young people in this city, going back to the world record attempt, because whether I get the world record or not, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
The point is, if we are furnished with a world record, then that's for you guys and everybody. We can all work with that.
Yeah.
If we don't get a world record, then the whole of ResearchGate
it's called into question.
And the numbers,
Yeah.
and the reads,
And the relevance. It all becomes more questionable, and it lowers the importance of anything else on there at that point.
I'm glad I didn't have to say it.
That's what I'm here for.
I'm glad I didn't have to say it. New Star Radio 98.7 FM. You're here with the DJ Notchalus show. I told him to get here for 6:45. I don't know where DJ Notchalus is. Shall I call him? No, he's probably on his bike. I don't want him to fall off. But yeah, so writing and theatre. We've segued into the creative sphere of theatre. So, Katie, and I wanted to ask you this this is what I've been thinking about over the Christmas.
Okay.
You read music, right?
Yeah, okay.
So you can read music. And you're a creative person. So for those who don't know, Katie worked on the Commonwealth with Daniel Alexander, of course, the great Daniel Alexander, filmmaker extraordinaire, producer, and just all-round great guy. And so Katie worked with that team, and outside of your technical expertise with, very heavy-duty cameras, as I like to call them, you have creative aspirations yourself, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, part of what I used to do is, part of my business was creating show reels for actors, which is essentially like an actor's CV. It's just little short scenes where they can showcase whatever skills for the type of roles they want to get, and headshots and stuff like that.
Headshots.
But the best thing about doing show reel scenes means that I used to have to quickly write little 2-minute scenes all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, because actors want to do something like, I want to showcase my American accent. I want to showcase how I can just cry on the spot. So you need to write a scene where they can get that across to potential casting agents or different productions. And that was my favourite thing about doing those, was being able to sit there and write a lot of things that help me practice further stuff that I genuinely care about, but it's something where I haven't got to worry about a start, a middle and an end, and making sure that there's great pacing. It's just a 2-3 minute scene, so it can be about anything I want. It gives you so much creative freedom just to, because sometimes you have an idea for something that you want to do, but it doesn't fit into a larger storyline or a larger plot or
True.
or anything like that. But it's characters that you want to explore and you want to do something with anyway. And I was going to say that earlier when you were talking about when you write something, a lot of times it isn't the storyline, it's the characters that you need to focus on. It's the characters that drive everything.
That's the one. Interestingly enough, have you retained, did you have a notebook of these skits?
I've got hundreds of notebooks, and I've got God knows how many hard drives with different screenplays and stuff on there.
Really?
Yeah, not just my stuff for show reels. And obviously I've got all the show reels that were filmed.
Yeah.
But I've got loads of screenplays that I've written that I'm just not quite happy with, or that could be better. I don't think I've ever written anything that I'm 100% happy with. I don't think I ever will, really.
Right. But we're at the old rep, aren't we? We've joined the group. Big up Louise Stokes and Nadeem. I've known her for a few years. Great, really wonderful. Big up Adrian as well. And it's going to be like every 2 weeks, I think, on a Thursday, where you can bring your scripts. So this is open to the listeners, of course. You can bring your scripts and go over and get feedback.
Kind of get to workshop them and hear them said out loud and get feedback from other creatives.
So a very important part of the process when developing any artistic work is the mighty feedback. Feedback, love my play, love it, and all that good stuff. So that's every Thursday. Old rep. If there's any playwrights out there who fancy themselves making the next Les Miserables, I think, or whatever.
I think that's the thing when you're writing as well. A lot of times you're so into what it is that you're doing, it's so important to you, and you're so focused that it's hard to step back and look at something critically, or not even critically in an objective way, because I'm extremely critical of my work, but I'm not very good at being objectively critical and actually looking at, I can do it for other people but just not for myself. But going to a group like that means you get to meet somebody who can do that for you, where they can sit down and be like, right, this is unnecessary, or change this, or change whatever, in a way where you haven't got to put it out there for the world to see. You can kind of fix it and get it how it needs to be before you move forward.
That's the one. Feed the mighty feedback. But then you raised another issue there, the issue of self-awareness. Yeah, critique, self-critique. looking at oneself critically, an essential component, I believe, and a lost art, I believe, in this modern era of me. The only sort of me that one should be analysing is that horrific ego that we all possess, of course. And self-awareness goes a long way to analysing that, looking at oneself critically and taking accountability.
Yeah, it's not even just.
I don't know why I was looking at you then when I said that, but
Neither do I. I feel like I've done something wrong.
accountability.
It's not even just smaller creators that do it. I mean, with the biggest problem they
I'm
had with
joking.
the recent Star Wars trilogy
Yes.
was that it was 3 individual filmmakers that were allowed to do whatever they wanted. They got to sit down and write their scripts and then direct their films without any outside input. They were just kind of allowed to do what they want, which I understand that in some circumstances that can
Yeah.
be beneficial. It can create something amazing. But when you're creating a trilogy that's the third part of an even bigger trilogy,
Yeah.
there has to be some sort of consistency. There has to be some sort of other input, and it's such a big IP and such an important piece of cultural content that I just find it shocking every time I realise that they didn't even consider an overall plot line for those films. It was just you make yours, you make yours, you make yours, and there was never.
Was that Return of the new ones?
Yeah,
you mean? Yeah.
JJ made his.
That's right.
And
yeah.
they had to change the end of how JJ's ended because originally Luke Skywalker was meant to be there all powerful with rocks floating in the air. And
Right.
that's why he's in his Jedi robes. When
Gotcha.
they come up.
Yes. Yeah. On the
But
lava.
then when it
pit,
cuts
yeah.
back, you never see them him in them again because Ryan Johnson wanted to have him have given up on that lifestyle and given up on the belief in the Force and having cut himself off from it entirely. So they had to re-edit the end of the film to make it make sense with what he wrote
Right.
next. And then because he didn't think
Gotcha.
about what the next guy was going to have to write, although it's a shocking twist to spoilers if anybody hasn't seen it. Kill off the main-
Spoiler alert.
Kill off the main bad guy halfway through the second film.
Yeah.
Because the guy writing the third one had no idea that was going to be the case. There was no plan. So then we've got to bring back a villain from before whose storyline was complete and done and dusted because there's no option. There was no plan. There was no outside input. There was no feedback. And
Kathleen Kennedy, I believe, is her name in the
Yeah.
mix there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Woke. It went woke. Yeah.
Yeah, and because the thing is we've turned woke into a bad word. Like it's a bad thing for men and women to be equal and for different races to be equal. But it's not. It's what we should be considering when you say the word woke is people that take that to the extreme, where that becomes what everything's about, regardless of story. Or I tried to watch Rebel Moon recently, and it just everything about that film just feels it is genuinely like expensive Star Wars fanfic, and not even done well. It just feels like let's shove everything in that's a talking point in today's society, and not really consider the overall film and what we're trying to showcase. It's just
Was it a tick boxing exercise?
yeah, but I think most things are these days. Pretty much most things, and because I noticed it the most with adverts, it became a thing about 7 years ago. Because I'm mixed.
Yeah.
The amount of times where at Christmas I'm like, oh look, it's another family with a black dad and a white mum and some mixed kids, because it's the easiest way to encompass a bigger
Everybody.
group of people.
To be inclusive.
Yeah, but even with stuff like that, they just go too far. But like, if it doesn't make sense for a story, don't just shove it in there. It's more insulting. In the Star Wars films, they had the first lesbian kiss, but it's literally
In a Star Wars film.
in the final one that came out,
Okay.
The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
But it was just in the background. You wouldn't have noticed it. And for China, they cut it out anyway.
Oh, China cut it out, did they? I didn't know that.
Disney cut it out before they sent it to China because it would have got restricted.
Gotcha.
But that means then you're not doing it for the right reasons. You're not putting something in there because it makes sense for the story, or you want to change things politically. You're putting something in there because you think, oh, this will get us good brownie points.
Or open up the demographic.
Yeah.
Maybe there might be same-sex couples, lesbian couples, whatever the nomenclature or taxonomy is today, I forget which. And it opens up the franchise to more people.
And I get that, but it's patronising to those people when it's just two pretty much background characters
Right.
in the background. That the first time I saw it, I didn't even notice that it happened.
I understand.
I only
yeah.
realised that it was there when I read that it was there and looked for it when I watched it the second and the only other time I've watched the film. It's that bad.
Gotcha. This is Hollywood, of course. The irony of Hollywood and Disney, as I always point out to people, you know, when you look at these companies, one must really look at the grandees, the chairmans of the boards, and for Disney, they were all Trump supporters. They're these very wealthy, old, sort of like Caucasian men, very right-wing, conservative. Then obviously down the food chain, you had the actors who were very left-wing, and so on and so forth. One could say that's balance. Dare say that's another metaphysical argument to be had. However, the people that control the money, and I think this chimes in, connects with what you were saying earlier, the idea of like these horrible right-wing Nazi racist rich people, billionaires, hiring left-wingers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to sell better products.
Exactly. It's just a way of manipulating the audience and getting as many people involved, but in a way where realistically it's not because they want to change the world or make things any different. It's just they want to change their profit margins. And
ironically, and again, you've hit the nail on the head there. The supreme irony is it's cost them money.
Yeah.
So because of the lack of sincerity, I would posit, and the lack of ethics, it's blown up in their faces, and they're losing money.
Well, what doesn't help is when you've got the people that created those films shouting at the fan base when they're complaining for legitimate reasons, because the films that have been made are not good films. But just simply by being a fan and hating, that means you're racist, you're sexist, you're all these other things. I hate those films, and I'm probably one of the biggest Star Wars fans on the planet.
You collected the toys, didn't you?
I literally have I have lightsabers that are going on the wall in my living room.
Sweet.
Yeah, and a Vader mask.
Sweet.
But apparently, if I dislike those films, it's because I'm annoyed that it's a female protagonist. I'm not. I'm annoyed because she's just not a good protagonist.
Yeah.
She's a terrible main character. Finn is a much more worthwhile main character.
He's a brilliant actor, isn't he?
Yeah, got a much, and the way he was treated by the company was horrifically bad as well.
Oh yeah, didn't they censor the black man out of the poster?
Yeah. For China, same as the lesbian
shocker.
kids.
Absolute shocker. Right, 7:30. I think we're going to wind up the show with some radio drama now. I was going to play some political stuff, but let us lighten the tone, being as we're talking all things show business. So here you go. For your listening pleasure, the Al Noor Society, the most awesomest radio drama to ever bless the airwaves. We'll catch you guys next week.
Take
Peace
care.
out. Peace.
Bye.